Electric cars and range anxiety. It is a real thing. But can you get range anxiety with a Tesla Model 3 long range? I mean, 310 miles per charge. That's pretty impressive. So we're going to take this thing on a day trip without one charge and see how it does. So for the past 17 years, I have been asked to go to a small town very close to where I live called Manton, California. And every year they have an apple festival. And since 2001, I have been asked to be a judge in the apple pie contest. And I'm already getting prepared. Of course, they always give me a lovely basket after every judging session. Manton Apple Festival. I've got my coffee. Now you're probably thinking, why do you have an open cup of coffee in your Tesla Model 3? I know it's crazy, but it's my car and I can do whatever I want. All right, so here's the thing. The reason I'm making this video is because, people have talked about the great charging network that Tesla have. Superchargers is phenomenal, and I'm in no way discrediting that. But I thought I'd maybe try to take it to the limit here and go on a nice long drive on just one full charge and see how far we can get, but kind of take it to a different limit. Because we're going to go into a mountainous region, and I thought this is a perfect opportunity for me to do that. I'm going to go to Manton. I'm going to judge the apple pie contest as I always do. Then I'm going to take it one step or a couple steps further. We're going to go up to a place called Lassen Volcanic National Park. I'm going to go do a hike. I'm going to summit the mountain there. Not a huge deal, by the way. And then from there, I'm going to go to another small town where I'm going to get a burger that I like to go there. Then from there, I'm going to head back home. All in all, on the full charge, on that trip, it's going to be about 228, close to 230 miles. Now, rated at 310 miles, you think that's not a big deal, but it kind of is, because we're going to be dealing with going up mountains, back down mountains, and everything in between. So it's going to get tricky to know exactly how far we can go on the charge. So I'll be curious to see if there's going to be any range anxiety as I'm anywhere at any point of the trip. Because as you know, when you tell it to go from point A to point B in the navigation, it'll kind of estimate how much battery charge you'll have left over once you get to that destination. So I'm going to be watching that very closely. So let's get on the trip. Let's get ourselves a Manton, which, by the way, isn't that far away, but then we got more miles to go after that. So far, I'm at about 84% of getting to the final destination, which is actually 1% higher than it originally started. So still feeling pretty good about the range, still feeling pretty good about the consumption of the battery. So we will see how we're doing. We are right now at 257 miles of charge in the battery, at least estimated, and at mile 31.3. So let's see how we're doing in comparison once we get to the top of this hill. Okay, so that wasn't so bad. I'm now taking a turn here. I'm going to actually stop going uphill, and now I'm going to start going downhill. But to just kind of give you an idea, we're now at 253 miles per range and gone 33 miles on this trip. And we are still, based on the computer here, to my destination of Manton, still at about 83% of charge is estimated once we get there. All right, here we are. Now it's time to look for parking. This is always the fun part of any kind of event like this, right? Let me see here. I think I'm going to go into the actual parking lot itself. All right, so I've made it to Manton at the Apple Festival. I'm very excited to get ready to start judging some apple pies. But before we get to that, let's see how we're doing so far on this trip. At the beginning of the trip, I had estimated 310 miles of range. The computer was telling me that I have about 83% of my battery left once I got to Manton. So far, so good. And at about 255 miles of range right now. And I'm looking at the range here, and it's showing that I'm a little over 80% of my battery. Since my last charge, I've gone 42.5 miles. So all in all, it looks like we're doing pretty good. Is it that 310 miles of estimated range? Obviously not, or we're getting less than that. But so far so good with the estimation from the computer. So even though I gained 3 miles going down that hill, I'm going to lose that very quickly once I go back up that hill getting to my next destination. So when I look at my anxiety range level at this point, I don't have any. I'm still at 0%. So still feeling pretty good about this trip, and I'm feeling even better because now it's time for me to get my apple pie judging on. All right, 8 pies in. Does it look like I've gained any weight yet? 8 pies in, and we got 19 pies total, so still feeling pretty good. Not full yet. So I did it. I made it through the apple pie contest. I judged 23 pies. I'm feeling a little full. I think I've had my share of pie for the year. So good to go until next year. And now it's time to start thinking about the next part of the trip. I'm going to go up to Lassen Volcanic National Park. I've kind of plugged in all the data here in the GPS. So here's what it's looking like so far. I'm at about a little over 80% of range on the car. I've got 259 miles of charge on the battery. At least that's what it's saying at this point, it estimated. Now here's where it gets interesting, because I've only got 26 miles to go, and I'm at about a little over 80% charge, and it says that I'm going to be down to 66% charge. And I know why that is, because we've got a lot of elevation gain to go from here to there. So again, this is where things are going to be interesting with this trip, to see how the battery does going up and down all of these hills. So I'm going to go ahead and get going, and we'll kind of keep you informed along the way. All right, so that's the KOA right there. And I did check to see if there were any other types of chargers, even just level 2 chargers in this area. And I did check, and actually that KOA kind of east of Shingletown, or northeast of Shingletown, does have Tesla chargers there. I'm not exactly sure what they charge, but I suppose if I was in a bind, I could go there and do a quick charge. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what this trip does, but there are a few out here, but not a lot. This is what I like to call the black hole, where there just aren't a lot of charging options. So let's keep trekking on.
Park. Let me get you tagged through your window.
Okay. So I have made it to Lassen Volcanic National Park. Here is the map and all that good stuff. I've got a entry park card, so that makes it easier. I don't have to pay the $25 to get in. So here we are. We have driven so far on this entire trip since I left home. I've driven 72 miles. From Manton to here, drove 26 miles. Now remember, at the very beginning of Manton, we had 259 estimated miles of range. Now we're down to 206. So we had quite an elevation gain and quite a loss in the battery too. So if we do the math here, we've gone 72 miles. So it's about 22 miles to the trailhead. We'll see how we do there. I'm going to go ahead and reset the trip from the from the park entry point to the trailhead, which is 22 miles. and we will see how the battery is doing. We're going to have to go up a lot of elevation, so it'll be interesting at 207 miles estimated charge to see what our battery will be looking at. We're up another 1,000 feet, up at 8,000 foot elevation. So we're continuing to make that elevation gain, and we are continuing to watch that battery drain faster than it normally would. Of course, that does start to create some of that range anxiety. Now, the thing is, you have to keep in mind, as I'm going up, I'm going to eventually reach the top, and then heading back down the hill, we'll probably see a lot of regenerative braking going on, and the battery getting more power to it. So the anxiety range, or the range anxiety that is, may start to drop as we start to drop in elevation as well. So let's keep trekking on and see how we're doing. I'm about 2 miles from the trailhead, and I've got 174 miles of estimated range at this point on the battery. So we'll keep on going. So it looks like we've reached the top of any elevation gain, because it said 8,511 feet, and now we're on a descent here. So that is good, I guess. And it looks like we are now at the Lassen Peak Trail. So I'm going to go ahead and pull into the parking lot here and assess the situation, see if it's too cold for me, and we'll see. So I did a little restroom break, and then I talked to a couple of people in the parking lot that have been up to the summit, and I'm not prepared. I'm seeing people coming down that mountain with full winter gear. And some of the people that I talked to said it was absolutely freezing out there. It's windy, it's snowy. And again, all I've got is this sweatshirt. I am totally bummed. I love going to the top of this summit, but on top of that, it really wouldn't get much of a view because it's all covered in clouds. So unfortunately not getting what I wanted out of this trip, but we are going to continue to trek on with some of the goals and to see if I can do this. Now, here's the thing. Remember, as I was coming up this mountain, coming up to the top of at least where the highway goes to at about 8,500 feet, I started watching the battery deplete more and more and more. But here's the thing. Now we're going to start going more downhill and get on the other side of the national park, and then we're going to get to a town called Chester. And I just put it into Google. I said, hey, take me to Chester, California. And now I'm feeling pretty confident about this. I've only got 37 miles to go. And since there's a lot of downhill, it's saying that I'm going to have 54% of battery by the time I get there. Now, it may be closer to around 45, 49, maybe 50, but I think I'm going to be able to make this. As I get to the exit of the park, I'm going to assess the situation and see how many miles it is there and back, and see if I can make it. But I'm going to go ahead and drop my anxiety level. It was about a 3 to 4. I'm going to drop it down to about a 2 at this point. So I'm feeling a little bit better, as I know that I've got a lot of downhill at this point, and I'll probably see the battery turn out a lot better. So here we are at the parking lot. I can see snow not too far up the hill. So yeah, I did not come prepared for this hike, unfortunately. So we're going to keep going. We're going to see if we can get to Chester, and we'll kind of keep you informed along the way. So let's keep going on this trip. Okay, so again, to recap, as I'm heading down the hill here, heading down the mountainside, we're going to start seeing better mileage. We're going to start seeing maybe even the battery miles begin to go up a little bit. But as of right now, I've got 171 miles of estimated range, and so far on this trip we've gone 93.8 miles, and I have got 36 miles to go to get to our destination, and it says it's going to take about 51 minutes to get there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording and start enjoying the beautiful sights that we've got out here. I may even stop and take a few photos for you. we are on our way to Chester. We are about 28 miles away. We did go downhill a lot, and we're still doing some downhill at this point, but we were earlier at the top at about 170, 171 miles of estimated range. Now we're up to 175. So again, that kind of helps to decrease some of that range anxiety a bit, because as you go up, you're losing a lot of battery power, but as you go down the hills, you start to gain some battery power, and it certainly makes for that range anxiety to go away a bit. So let's keep trekking on, see how we do once we make it to Chester, and give it the report from there. Well, this bums me out. This was part of my tradition years and years ago, before I was married, before I had my son, and I used to, do these great hikes at Lassen Volcanic National Park, and then I would come here for a burger at the Burger Depot. And so that was my plan, to come on out to Burger Depot and get a burger, and then I come to this, and it says, "Closed for the season. Thank you, everyone." I didn't realize that they were closed for the season ever. That's too bad. So I guess I'll have to see what else is in town to grab a little bite to eat. Well, I drove around town, couldn't really find anything all that appetizing. I was really looking forward to that burger, so maybe I'll see something along the way as I get back home. So I have basically told the car to take me home. I've got exactly 100 miles to go. Now, based on the battery, the estimated range that I've got is 162 miles. Based on what the calculations are, once I get home, I should still have 28% of the battery power left. So I am going to be heading home. Now, if I start feeling uncomfortable once I get to a certain location, I can take a detour that'll be about 10 to 15 miles out of my way to get to a supercharger if I absolutely have to, if I feel uncomfortable. So we'll see how I feel once I get to that point, but from really this point forward, it's pretty uneventful. We saw some beautiful sights at Lassen Volcanic National Park, and of course before that, I got to judge in the apple pie contest, and we'll see how the battery fares as we continue on this road trip. I've been trying to keep track of my anxiety during this trip, so I forgot to mention that as I was leaving Chester. Keep in mind, Chester is the halfway point, and I had a little over 50% of my battery. So theoretically speaking, with over 50% of my battery, I should be able to make it home. And based on what the computer is saying, I should have about 28 to 29% of my battery once I get home. So that's a pretty good cushion. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I have just a little bit of anxiety, but not much. So I'm going to say about a 1, but I think that might be pushing it, maybe about a 0.5. So I have reached the point in the trip where I was saying if I didn't feel confident in the amount of charge that I've left, that I could take a 10-mile detour to go to a supercharger. Well, here I am. I've got 117 miles of charge left on the battery, of course, the estimated charge. I've got about 29 miles to get home. So do I need that supercharge? Absolutely not. I don't even know why I ever doubted Tesla or this car in general. And I think it's just because I've driven the Leaf for 5 years before this car, and I had so much range anxiety with that car that I'm still adjusting to having a car that can handle these long distances. So thumbs up big time to Tesla on this car. Able to do a nice long day trip without ever having to charge and still enjoying the sights. I am very happy so far with the results. So a little under 29 miles to go. and we'll have a nice conclusion on just how well this car did. Well, I don't know why I ever doubted this car. I said that a little bit earlier. This car has proven to me once again that it is everything I have ever wanted in a long-range electric vehicle. So when I first mapped out this trip, it showed about 228 miles. I knew that I could get about 310 from a charge. And so I wanted to kind of prove that you can go on a day trip and drive several hundred miles, a couple hundred miles or plus, and still have a charged battery, or at least some battery left when you get back home. And this car has proven that to work. Now, the thing about this trip that concerned me is the fact that I was driving in a mountainous terrain. So you got up and you got down, you got up, you see the battery deplete very quickly, then you see it not deplete a whole lot for several miles. And it kind of would take me back, especially when I would see it deplete very quickly. It would take me back to my Leaf days when I had that range anxiety. So I remember at one point I had said that my range anxiety was up to a 4, but at the very beginning it was down to a 0, and then toward the end it was back down to 0. So it kind of did one of these things, right? Kind of that peak. But here's the thing, I just did the math, okay? So according to this, I've got an estimated range of 78 miles of charge left on this battery. I went 234.6 miles. Range anxiety, I don't know why I had it, because here's the thing. This car is rated at 310 miles. When you do the math, 234.6 plus 78, that's more than 310 miles. So I came out ahead, 312.6 to be exact. I didn't hypermile at all. All I did was just drive the speed limit, maybe a little bit over it sometimes, but I just drove like a normal car. And yet, I still got more than rated more than what this car gets. And that's 310 miles, or what this car is rated for. So, this car has met everything that I've ever anticipated in getting a car like this. You know, over 5 years ago when I purchased the Nissan Leaf, kind of that my way to get my feet wet into a more affordable, shorter range car in anticipation of getting this long range car. What it did, unfortunately, is it created a lot of range anxiety. And unfortunately, that range anxiety kind of bled into this car. And I'm beginning to learn more and more, especially after this trip, that I shouldn't worry about it. And especially when the computer rates your trip and says, you know what, you're going to have this much percentage left of your battery. For the most part, that's very accurate, within about 5 percentage points up or down, quite honestly. So once again, rating this trip, I could not be happier with the results. And I've just got to get over that range anxiety that I had with my Nissan Leaf. So thumbs up to Tesla. Thumbs up to the Model 3. I could not be happier with this car. And, you know, for those of you who are watching who are on the fence, you don't need to be on the fence. This car is phenomenal. Everything you're hearing, all the good things you're hearing about this car are true. All the bad things you're hearing about the car, not necessarily true, because for some, they're dealing with some things that others aren't. I have yet, knock on wood, I guess it'd be my head, or let's do the little center console here because that's real wood. I have yet to run into any problems with this car. Again, I'm going to knock on that wood a few more times because, you know, you hate to Murphy's Law, right? And like I say, I couldn't be happier with this car. The performance, the driving experience with this car is more than I had ever anticipated. So Tesla Model 3, rocking it. All right. That's pretty much that trip in a nutshell. And like I say, if you're on the fence financially, listen, I'm not going to try to argue with you on that. I understand if it's a financial thing, you're waiting for the $35,000 car. I understand. Great. All right. But if you have the finances to purchase this car, or you're thinking maybe it's just not quite enough, I got to kind of finagle a few things within my finances to make it work, my suggestion to you is do everything you can to make it work. I did, and I have no regrets for the probably it is not probably it is the biggest car payment I have ever had, and I have no regrets. This car is phenomenal. It's great. I can't say enough good things about it. So that's it. Great trip. Hope you enjoyed it. If you found this video informational, be sure to give it a nice thumbs up. If you found this video informational and you'd like to see more, then be sure to subscribe to my channel. I will be doing more videos like this, more informational videos. My son told me to do some more fun videos, so I'm trying to have a little bit more fun. But we'll see what we can do with this channel. Until the next video, until I see you next time, stay safe.